Now we have the backend part for your app. Okay. Such that for your authentication, so your register and authentication application, you have all these services such that you will have the connection towards your database. And in this way, you have the controller such that the backend will receive commands and it will be able to register a new user according to the username and password, as well as you will have to authenticate according to your username and password. So this is when you also have the roles that will also be retrieved. And according to your roles, you will have all these panes that will appear. So you see here that what you need to provide is, in fact, you have an API, such that this is, in fact, an application interface. And for it, you will have in Spring, you will manage course, because you will have all your services, like here, you will call them. And in this way, you will have to allow them to be called from your front end, as well as you've got your session and your rules, such that when you have a post based on a sign up, you will create a new account. You can have also a post in order to log in. Then you will have a get method such that you retrieve all the public content. So inside all, you retrieve the public content, as well as for all the other pages, you will have one for user, one for moderator, and one for admin. Okay. And in fact, all these, they are based on your HTTP request and response. All right. Okay. 37. So what you basically do, again, you have the front end and the back end. So first of all, you have to register the user, meaning that your client will have a post request of API authentication sign up based on username, email, role, and password. So it is exactly this one. You have a post, username, email, password, and roles, where you have them of type Json. Then what it will do, in fact, at the backend, it will check whether or not it exists, whether the username exists, whether the email exists, and whether everything is all right, or whether they do not. Then you will have to save it inside a Mongodb database, so in NoSQL format. As well as you will have a message that everything went out well. When you want to log in, you have a new post request according to a sign in. Oh, okay, this is when you have a sign up and sign in. It's like this. You have username, you have password, and you want to access such that you will have your token. So you have your JSON web token according to what you have provided for username and password, and they will be simply retrieved as a response according to what? You've got your token, you've got the type, okay, of the user that you've got, you have your user info as well as what you're authorized to do. Then, when you want to access a resource, what it does is that you need your token as an authorization head. So based on which, whether you call some resource, it will check the signature of your JSON web token. And after that, you don't have to get the user info, you authenticate, and as a response, you will receive exactly the resource that you have after you have your JSON web token verified. And this is why you add it. So whether you have a get and so on, inside authentication, you have API key or bearer token. You can put it here inside bearer token. So this is the one which gets retrieved when you have a user that will log in and sign up. So let's see. In fact, as the architecture, so first of all, you will have a request. You have the request from what exactly is the client. Okay, so let's see. 4. This is the one. This is your client, and this one will send via the service your request towards your controller, okay, which is this one. So you have the request. The request will do what? You have a web security, you have an adapter, and for it, you will have an authentication entry point, such that for each and every request, what you do is that you will have the username and password validated, based on which you will have your authentication token, which will lead to having your user details. Then, for doing the filtering for them, it means that you will have a service, and in this way you can retrieve your user details. Then when you want to do the part with Authentication Manager, this one depends on the service, such that you have the user details. As well as for authentication, you also have the password that gets encoded. Then for each and every request, exactly you've got the controller with the authentication controller, which is just regarding the security based on JSON web tokens. Then you also have the repository. So you have the user repository, the role repository, and this is like you have DAO. So you have your database access objects, such that based on everything that you do and you modify over here, according to the user detail service, you also persist it inside your database. And the same is valid, so you have your authentication controller, while you can also have your test controller based on your roles, such that you can have the role for user, for the admin, as well as moderator. And in the end, you have a response, such that based on the subscribe that you have here from the client side, you have the response which you after that process. All right. So let's see. Okay, here you have them one by one, exactly what I said. Then you will want to have a new Spring Boot project, and the Spring Boot project can be generated via a website like this one. I did start.spring.io, and what I did use was a new Maven project, such that you will have an XML with POM, and according to the POM inside dependencies, you say exactly which packages you want to use. So you will have a Maven project. This is in Java, and you can have your Spring Boot options. Let's say it's this one. This is what I did use. And also I did name it as being a tutorial app with Java 8. Okay. Now, inside it, you see that by default, you will have to, so it will provide you a zip called tutorial. So I open it. Okay, this is the one with tutorial. And inside my tutorial, you will have to unzip it, and you can open it with IntelliJ. So you can download the IntelliJ community. If I open IntelliJ, you will have the part with the dependencies inside POM. Okay. This is my tutorial, and see here, Spring Authentication. All right. Then for it, I have everything inside the POM.xml. Okay, and here I have all my dependencies. So the dependencies are exactly which and every package you use, like you have the Spring Boot framework, the starter for MongoDB, whether you have your security, as well as you can have the JSON web token according to a specific version, and you also get the validation. So for each and every package, what it will do, when you open it, you will have such an icon with this M, and if you click on it, it will download all the dependencies. So whether they are here like in red, they will not be downloaded. And what you will have to do is to click on this button such that you can have all these dependencies downloaded for you. And in the end, it will also specify down that everything is all right. And you won't have any warnings like these 4 warnings. Then you also need to authenticate towards your MongoDB, which means that you will have a file called application.properties. This is the one, application properties. So inside application properties, you will have to mention here which is the name of your MongoDB. And you will see that afterwards I will also use the graphical user interface to visualize it. You also have everything that works on localhost at this port 27017. And for your app, you can also have, let's say, a secret key with some expiration time. And this is what you provide. Then you've seen that when you have those pages loaded, you are having your roles. So inside, in this one in app component, here, this one, it will show the admin board, the moderator board, where the role includes these values. And these values exist exactly inside Spring. So I have them defined, which would be the roles, whether it's user, whether it's moderator or admin. And they exist as enums. And you have them here, okay, with these E roles for each one of them. You also have this whole package, this whole project. All right. Also, what you do define is that you have these DAO objects. So you have this database access object. So for all your repositories, in fact, you maintain the state of each and every object. So whatever I modify, if I create, I also have the link with MongoDB. And having the link with MongoDB, you have all these metadata with documents, which will be the collection. If I open it over here, I have my row. So you see here that you use these annotations. Each and every record that you have inside your database, it has the ID. ID is automatically generated, as well as you have inside a document. So it would be that I have a collection. So inside MongoDB, you've got a certain collection, and it will be the collection of rows. And now I have a row which is characterized by an ID automatically provided. I have my name. This is my empty constructor. I can also set which is the role. The role being one of these inside the enum. Whether it's a role user, role moderator, or role admin. As well as I have the getters and setters. So like in all the other programs, I go to generate and I have my getters and setters. You don't need to type them. What I also have, so you have roles. Based on roles, I also have my users. And users are set inside a different collection called users. And for it, you see that you do the mapping. Based on the ID, you will have a database reference. And why do I need this reference? In fact, the reference is exactly for roles. Roles that exist inside another collection. So this is why you use a DB reference, and you store it as a document inside. For it, what I need to do is to have a validation constraint for the email, whether it shouldn't be blank, or maybe I have a maximum size. So you set it in this way with JAVAX, such that if I go inside user, what I will have here is, in fact, all these dependencies. I have my user. I define my ID, which is private. Then I can have a username. I can determine which is the maximum size for it. Also the email. And as you can see, you have a certain validator. So you don't need to add your regex for the email. it just has a validation constraint for email. Then you can also have your password, and you can determine which is the maximum size, as well as it should exist. So you have this at, not blank. So depending on all these, you will have an error. So in case it is not satisfied, it will trigger an error. Then you also have your DB reference, such that you have multiple roles based on hash sets, as well as you've got the empty constructor. You have the one for username, email, password, and getter setters for each one of them, as well as you have the getter setters for your hash set for roles. Okay, well, this is the part with the user. Okay, and what you will see here is, in fact, so you can get an error like this one for validation, and validation will not appear, and this is when what you have to do is to modify your DOM and to add validation. So whether you do receive this error inside POM, you have this validation and you include it as a package and everything will be fine. So you can retrieve such an error. Sometimes this is caused by the repo, which wasn't updated, but it's better just to use the POM and it's perfectly okay than to have it loaded. You don't need all those resources. Also, you will have your repository. So your repository is, in fact, what do you want to get? You want to get a certain user by username, you want to check whether it exists, or you want to check whether it exists via email, such that I don't want to have another existing user based on the username, no existing pre-existing email, as well as I want to check if it exists. So in fact, all this user repository, you link it to what? You link it to Mongo according to a user, and you've also got some permissions. So this is when, for the user repository, it is exactly this part with the user repository. You access your database, and you also keep in mind that you have some user details. Well, let's see. You define just these ones inside repository. Okay, this is for the user repository. So being an interface, as before, you just define what do you want to retrieve. So this is the type that gets retrieved. You have your function name and exactly your input parameters. And it ends in semicolon because it's an interface. Then you also have a role repository. So as you've seen, for each and every person, you have several roles. So you can find according to the name, which would be the role. Okay. So what it will have, it's another interface, which is placed over here, and I have my role repository. Okay. All right. Then I have my security configuration, such that I can use my JSON Web Token, and I also can retrieve my user details, which means that you also have your authentication entry point. And for this one, you need to override a method called commons, as well as maybe it's the case when it wasn't authenticated. So maybe you ask some HTTP resource which is secured. And in this case, you have some authentication exception, which will be simply triggered. Okay, and this comes this part with the security. So I will have my security based on authentication entry point. And this authentication entry point, in fact, it will see whether or not you are authorized to access a certain request. So maybe if you are not authorized, you will receive the 401 status, and this is the one that you will use. So you will want to have, based on the request, you've got a response, and whether it is not the case or whether you throw an exception error, it will show which one is it, as well as it will say that you are not authorized to access it. Okay, this is how you can have it. And this is when you have your authentication entry point, just to see. Okay, so you have these authentication entry point, as you can see. This is the one that you have to code. Okay, or if someone of you who is responsible for it will do it. Then what you do receive are in fact the user details. So for all these user details, you have them inside here. I will have to implement all the services such that you have to implement the user details. Then each and every user will have an ID, you have a username and email, okay, as well as the password, such that you will have some authorities, and then what you need to have inside the constructor, you just set them. Then you will have to build, so you build according to all the authorities, and this will mean that you have to get all the parameters for ID, username, email, password, and the authorities that it has. So authorities are in fact all these roles that it can access. And here you have the getters and setters, get password, get username, and whether it equals or not. Okay, I will go deeper in it because I know that you're mostly related to the front end. Okay, as well as what you also need are the user detail services. So in fact, you can find a username, a user based on the username. So what it will do is, in fact, it uses the user repository, and based on the user repository, it will find according to name. And now it depends whether it doesn't exist, it will simply throw an error. So this is like a lambda expression. Whether it doesn't exist, you simply throw user not found. If not, you just build it. Okay, let's see. Also, you have the part with authentication based on Json, this web token. So according to username, whether it's a date, it's an expiration or a secret, and you validate it. And this is when you will have exactly your utils. So you have your Java web token utils according to what? According to your token and your expiration milliseconds. These are from properties. Okay, these two. Okay. And you will have to generate a certain token for authenticating based on it, and you will have the date issued at the current date, when it will expire, according to what I did provide here in milliseconds, as well as you can get the username from the Java Web Token. You can even validate it. Okay. Not going deeper in it. What you also have is also the filter. The filter is when you also link it to the Java Web Token. You also have the user details, and you filter according to the request, whether or not. So you load by username, and then what you will receive is in fact the authentication token that you will provide. So you set the authentication token, and you can also parse it, whether it's authenticated. And what it will do, it will also have this bearer. So it means that in fact you have this bearer token, something like this. Okay. And also you will have the part with the web security, the web security config that you will have to add. So it's again, you link it with your beans, the beans for your database. And this will mean that you have your user details, you have the authentication, you have your filtering. So this in fact does the link with what you've got inside your MongoDB. Password encoder, which one is it, to configure it. Okay, so not delving deep into it. As well as you have your REST controller. So as before, you have your requests, whether you want to log in, whether you want to sign up, as well as you've got your responses that you receive. So it is exactly like in Postman. And this means that you will have a payload. Okay, you will have a login request. Login request, which means that you shouldn't have any blank username, no blank password. And then you have the setter getters for it. This is just for the login request. So exactly what it should have. So meaning that when you send such a request with get, you keep in mind that you need to validate whether or not they exist. So this is for the login. Then when you want to sign up, what do you need? Well, you will have a username. You can add a minimum, maximum dimension. Also the email, which one you would like it to be. And again, you say that it's an email. Also the password that you should have, at least 6 characters, maximum 40. And you again have the getter setters. Okay. Then what you will also have are the responses. So responses is, so you will have a token, you will have the type, which is a bearer, and then you have the ID provided by your database, you have user, email, so this is in fact a DAO. You will retrieve what you have inside your database, meaning that you will have the getter setters for it. Okay. Also, you have the control such that you will answer to requests like this one. For API test, for API sign up. Okay, so all of these. So when you can sign up according to email, to the password, and you can simply check the roles. So let's see a small introduction to it, how it looks like. You have Authentication Controller. So what you do code here is that you have your API authentication. It is like here I have my API authentication, as you can see here. So when I want to get the login and the register, what I do is an HTTP request towards this path. And what I should provide is the controller. I make it available, and then it's an auto wire. It's auto wired according to the authentication manager, to the user repository, to the roles, how you encode the password, and it's automatically done for you. And then you have this sign in. So whenever you have such a sign in, sign up request, okay, let's say this is the sign in one, you need username and password. So what it will do, you see that you call this password authentication based on both of them, login request of username and password, and then you will have to get its authority, whether or not it's available. And the same is used for sign up. But keep in mind that you need to check whether the username exists. If it's not the case, then you should say that it was taken. Again, you check the email. Was it taken? Okay, I have a warning. Also, you will have your user roles. So the user roles are the ones of user, admin, moderator, such that based on which you did display the interface. Here, it's inside this one. Okay, so you have show moderator board, show admin board. Okay, whether the roles include admin moderator. So it's exactly this one, as you can see, whether or not it exists, and if it does, then you add it inside roles in order to retrieve it. And you will have your user register. And the same is done also, so you can have a test controller. The test controller is based on each and every call with API tests for all, whether you do have the public content, user content, as well as the board. So you've seen over here that for the public content inside home, you were having get public content. Get public content will in fact call this one, and you will see that in fact you will have to display exactly what you receive from your service. So this is what you return. You return this from the service, and what you will have displayed by your front end is in fact this content. So when I go here, it should be 90. Okay, this is the one. When I have here my public content, this is in fact what is returned by my controller. So in fact, this is what was called. And this is how you retrieve it. Okay, via Angular. I'm going back to what we're doing. Okay, this is with the login request. Okay, with the bearer of roles. Then, okay, this is the one with authenticate and roles. Okay, perfect. So this is what you've seen before. And now comes the part that, okay, but still I need to have access to my database. My database, which I provide based on name and everything according to, it is here, application properties. Inside application properties, I name exactly which is my database name based on localhost and how it works. So what you can use here, you can also have a graphical user interface. For Mongo, you can use MongoDB Compass. You can download it, you unzip it, and you will have this MongoDB Compass, such that when you click on it, okay, you can go to a new collection, and having the new collection, you can have your host name, which will want you also to allow it to be accessed. So as you can see, what you do provide here for localhost and your port, it's also exactly what I have here to know where it runs. Then inside my database, I see all my available existing databases, as well as you can create a new database. And this one will be called Authentication DB. You can also add a new collection of roles, for example. And it's called Authentication DB in order to match what I did add here. So I have Spring Data MongoDB database, and I provide my name. Then for it, what you can do, you can add a record. So for example, I have all the existing DB records that can be role user, moderator user, admin user. So in fact, they are the roles that I have inside my enum. So they are here. Exactly the same ones to match what I do have inside my database. And what will be generated are in fact with IDs. IDs are automatically assigned and you have a name. Then for it, what I can do is also to run the application. So the application is when you simply have this tutorial running. First of all, I need the Compass. Okay. Let me recall. Compass. Okay. It got unzipped. It's in Angular MongoDB Compass. Okay, this is the one. And let's open it. Okay. Such that you will have to you connect. It will run by default on local host. Okay, you have the authentication DB. Based on the authentication DB, I can see my roles which were created. Then what I can do is also to go to users and I see each one of them. I have moderator email, all the passwords they get hashed. Okay, and even the roles, I see them in this way. So it's not human readable. So it's admin user, and let's see another user that I have over here. All right, so this is my database. And in order to start Spring, I will go to this tutorial application. And if I run it from here, then it will start right. Okay, it is displayed over here. Okay, And I can also have the ng serve on my app in order to have cd authentication. ng serve port was 8081. What I recall. So here inside IntelliJ, I will have it working. Okay, my app has the version. It is using Tomcat with 8081 and it is linked to the database. Okay, this is the one, database at 27017, according to what I did provide in application properties. Okay, such that here you see that you can all use Postman to create moderator with moderator roles. Okay, and you can have them one by one, so you can sign up. Okay, this is the sign in, sign up. Body, I can have a moderator, whatever, 3, let's say it's a new moderator, and some roles. So I send. Okay, and it did get registered successfully, such that inside my Mongo, okay, wait, going back, and inside users, I see my moderator 3, which was added. And also the roles, as you can see, it's not the human readable ones. So it's hashed. Okay. So it depends whether it's, let's say, a moderator, then what you can have, it's maybe an admin, and you have your roles, so you just change this array at the end to also contain the word admin. It will also be registered. Then what you can do is also to register a user. Also, what you can do test is to have the content. So let's say it's the content. To get it for the public content, let's say it's get API, then I have my test for all, and it will say that it has the public content. So whether the JSON is not used, you can even leave the one which you did test before and it won't affect your result because it doesn't get interpreted. Okay. Then what you can have is also maybe I want to get a test for a user, but I'm not allowed. So this is why you have this 401. You are not authorized to access it because you need to log in. As well as what you can do is to have a sign in. This is the one, sign up, sign in. Let's say I'm a moderator with this one. So when I want to log in, what in fact it does, it knows that I have an ID. It is moderator, I have my email. I also have the associated roles. So what I do see here for my moderator, I see that I have 2 roles, but I cannot interpret them. It's not human readable, it's hashed. And it means that I have a role for user and another role for moderator. As well as you see that you have this access token. So this access token is important because this is how you can access your resources. So you are allowed to have, so as a user or a moderator, to access your simply resources. So maybe I want to do a get. Okay. So let's say I do a get, and based on it, I have a test, and let's say for moderator. Also inside authentication, I need a bearer token, and to have this bearer token, which is the latest one. So I simply change it. And if I have a send, as you can see, it will be the moderator board. But what I can do is also to have the admin. So as you can see, I'm just a moderator. I have just also user, but I'm not an admin. So I can also test based on user. So as you can see, I can also access the user content. But because I don't have the rights as an admin, it simply crashed as before. Okay, so it's forbidden, as you can see. Okay, and don't forget about the authentication, being the authentication that you did receive when you did the signing. Okay, so when I do the signing, you receive exactly your output. Okay, what you can also do, so you just change and you will have to log in as an admin if you want to access that one. Now, you've seen that for my Angular part, I did run it on the port 8081. I did put it over here with -- port 8081. And it runs such that I can even use the app. So let's see, localhost, but it's with 8081. So this is what I see in the public content. Then I can have my sign up and can have some credentials. Okay, then let's say it's this one at gmail.com. Okay, a password. Maybe I want to put it and to be less, so it should have at least 6 characters. So I will register it. Okay, bye-bye. So it will say that the register was successful. Then based on let's add the password that I used, and it will forward me to the person having this role of user. So as you can see, it will retrieve what I did add over here at my user. This is one. Border user, border minus user works. And you receive also for your user exactly the token, also the email address, and which is the role. And whether I want to log in, let's say it was the admin. I don't recall what I think it's this one. That's a password. Okay. Password is requirement. Let me see. This is for the event binding. So it is when I create. Tap. All right. Sign up. This is my admin 1 2 3 4. Oh. And now you see that you have both roles. You have the admin as well as you have the user role, and this is why you have both of them which appear. Okay, admin board. And even for this admin board, this is the one that did receive your data. Yeah, it receives the data from Spring, and this is why it will get added inside this P content. While for user, it already retrieves, so it has nothing here, but it retrieves the HTML associated to this file. All right. So even for admin, I can see the roles, and we can do the logout, such that it's again register and login available. Okay. This is basically it, and with all the tests. Okay. Let's see. I will stop this one.